Beyond 3D. Welcome back tonight to another edition of Beyond 3D, coming to you from the RPP studios on the Mornington Peninsula. Before we start tonight's show, be sure to check out our Facebook page, which is Beyond, the number 3, a hyphen and the letter D, where you can follow along with this evening's show. Tonight, Beyond 3D would like to present a lecture brought to you by Emmy Award-winning journalist Linda Moulton Howe on the high strangeness activity that's occurring throughout the US military at the moment, known as Interstellar binary downloads. Beyond 3D.
On August 28, 1991, 11 years after Sergeant Peniston touched the symbols on the alien craft in the Rendlesham Forest, Soviet authorities were tracking a UFO on a zigzag course at 4,225 miles an hour. The rapid radar track vanished over Kyrgyzstan. A year later, in June 1992, a search party found a cylinder-shaped craft with strange green symbols on it. The investigators reported, quote, "powerful electromagnetic field emanating from the wreckage," close quote. All photographs and videotape recordings were overexposed. The craft had crashed in the Shaitan Mazar Gorge, also known as the Devil's Grave, in the central Tian Shan Mountains of eastern Kyrgyzstan. And then, 14 years after that, in late June 2015, an Army sergeant with his wife, 2 young children, dog and a cat, began moving from, I want to make sure I say it, Richmond Hill, Georgia, very near Savannah, on their way to go to Fort Carson in Colorado. And this was going to be generally their route right here. He's a very intelligent, very responsible Army sergeant, I know what his general work is, and he's very familiar and works with them all the time. This is very important. The GPS is part of his daily life. And he sets the family truck's GPS for the route, and they plan to travel at night when it was cooler with less traffic and stay in motels during the day. The husband, who I'm calling Sergeant CJ with his permission, because he's active Army, he wants to understand what is happening to him. The man is really living a schizophrenic life of strict Army and having what we're now going to unfold. So I am honoring everything about him, but I've seen his DD-214, I have seen a lot of documents on this man, and I've talked with his wife. Well, they start off between here and there, something weird, really weird happens. He and his wife are both shocked when this comes down out of the sky in front of their truck. And he estimated that he is looking at something that is 820 feet long, that's nearly 3 football fields, and nearly 200 feet high vertically. It has, he said there were bright white sparks that were projected out beyond the craft, front and back. He couldn't understand. He said, when I sketched it, it's wrong. He said, I sketched it like it's coming. He said that the sparks were not connected to this strange, gigantic disc. And he did not, he couldn't understand what he was looking at. And then he and his wife both noticed that there are these 5 symbols right here below the midline. He told me, he said, in the Army, I'm a trained observer. I've been a trained observer for 15 years. I'm able to identify high velocity rounds as well as mortars, rockets, artillery, aircraft, all types of aircraft. I'm trained to do that for whatever comes down in front of us on military missions. This huge craft was way beyond anything I'd ever been trained for. Sergeant CJ's wife remembered the UFO surface glistened, and she was comparing it for me. She said, you know, when you get a rainbow sheen, like on an oil slick, she said the whole surface to her looked like these rainbow colors, sort of dim and surface reflections when it tilted and moved toward them. And she also thought that there were round lights around the perimeter. The encounter was from 1:25 to 1:29 a.m. Eastern, precisely from Sergeant CJ's point of view, on the early morning of June 29th, 2015, because he looked at his digital watch. He said, I'm so used to looking at my watch all the time in my work. He said, I looked at my digital watch when we saw the craft, and then he said it had been there for a few minutes, and then he said it didn't move. I swear it did not move. It blinked out in front of them like they shut off a light. And for those of you who are very familiar with the field, you know that is a very common description by people who have seen part of this unidentified aerial phenomena, that instead of it moving, it just clicks out. Then the couple feel extremely confused and disoriented. Sergeant CJ drove up the road a few miles and found a Shake Rag Express on Highway 1 South. And when he tried to get out of the truck, he said his legs felt like wet noodles, as if he could not stand up, and he didn't know what was wrong. But the greater shock was when he bought some food. The Shake Rag Express receipt showed here that they were in Wadley, Georgia. And this is way off of their GPS. Here's where they started. The GPS was supposed to do this. And I've talked with them, they both said, how could we have been in the car and it veers north and neither one of us knew that, and it really bothers him. He is so bothered by this. It's a profound angst inside of this man. He's in the Army. He is supposed to be responsible, and he's supposed to be able to control his environment, and something like this happens. This man is really, really troubled. And the couple had no idea about how this diversion occurred. This trip should have taken 4.5 hours. And they should have been in Atlanta late at that night. But what happens next in this amazing saga implies that this diversion that they were not conscious about on Route 1 North to the rural countryside of Wadley, Georgia, was under the control of an alien intelligence in order to transmit binary information into Sergeant CJ's mind. Sergeant CJ and his wife continued driving northwest to Atlanta, and again they went on a completely different road, and they finally went a little north of Atlanta, feeling that they had to make up time for this huge loss they did not understand, and they checked into the Magnuson Hotel of Kennesaw, a little north of Atlanta, at 7:36 a.m. on June 29th. So this had happened around 1:25 to 29 a.m. Now they're checking in here at 7:36 a.m. on June 29th, 2015. And they slept all that day. And then they got back on the road, headed for Kentucky. And the credit card sales receipt for the Motel 6 here in Paducah shows CJ and his family checked in at 5:13:36 a.m. on June 30th, 2015. Exhausted, everyone. The children, CJ and his wife, they all fell into sleep. But Sergeant CJ found himself waking up in their Motel 6 bathroom, holding a ballpoint pen in one hand and this letter-sized back of the motel receipt in the other, staring at the back of this receipt covered with squares and lines that trailed off to a WTF.
3D.
During our first interview about this high strangeness, he asked that his voice be electronically altered because he is active Army and he wants to remain anonymous. So what you're going to hear is a distorted electronic male voice. Sergeant CJ talks about a vivid dream that he had before becoming conscious in the bathroom. In the dream, light gray alien beings wearing dark lenses over their eyes, similar to but larger than human eyes, are warning about a threat to Earth. Have you seen the symbols in sleep or in your mind's eye?
Usually in my sleep, and that first time that it happened was in that hotel. I do not remember getting out of bed and walking into the bathroom with a pen in my hotel sheet and doing that. I literally woke up standing there after I had finished.
Have the symbols been repeated in addition to the squares and the vertical lines?
Yeah, I've seen them again in dreams.
Can you describe that dream?
Yeah, it's dark all the way around, and they're being scrolled past from right to left. They're slightly illuminated in like a light blue color.
Are you getting any impression of what they are saying in your dream?
Something Council of 5, I believe.
Council of 5, and what are they saying?
It's more of a warning and preparation for something, an alert of what may come, or what could come, or what is soon to come, or something to that effect. And they're doing what they can to try to help us. They're almost to the point where they're outnumbered, and we're going to need to assist and get to where we need to be sooner in order to be able to stand a chance.
Did you see any humanoids of any shape or size or type in any of your dreams?
Yes, ma'am.
Which type?
The skin similar to ours, however, grayish in color, elongated heads, larger sockets for eyes, larger eyes. In the dream that I was seeing, there was one about where my feet would be, and I could see expressions on its face as a little bit of worry, but was trying to keep me calm.
Did you get the telepathic impressions of warning there aren't enough of us, there's more of them, something is going to happen that's going to be a big problem, and that these beings have been trying to help and now they can't because they don't have enough numbers versus what is there?
Similar, perhaps, but I think it's more along the lines of what we're doing that's going to harm us, such as sending signals out into space is not a safe thing to do, that we have technology that we need to expand on, but it's being kept from everyone behind locked doors or closed doors, and only to certain individuals or something to that effect, and allow all minds to come together to get things done a little bit quicker.
Or what is going to happen?
Whatever's going to happen might negatively affect us. I don't know what that might be, though.
And if there is a warning or an alert, that would imply that something is coming that may be harmful.
I don't know. I know it's something that will affect us here on Earth. I know that at our current advancement in technology and how we're progressing is happening too slow. And the way to fix that is opening up and allowing everyone here who is kept in the dark or not being told the information. We need to allow outside minds in order to solve the issues that we're having, to increase our advancement in technology and speed up our process for advancement.
If that doesn't happen, what bad could happen?
I really don't have an answer to that.
About the Council of 5, Sergeant CJ told me he had never heard about this outside this dream. But when you Google ET or Alien Council of 5, this is one of the websites that comes up, and you see that it is associated on this list of alleged alien races that include the Emerther. And the website Alien Axioms describes the Emerther as one of the founder races of the Council of Five. There's no source. It doesn't give any source for this information. I'm just sharing what you find when you just do a search on this. One of the founder races of the Council of Five, ancient and more advanced on many levels than most cosmic intelligences. Allegedly, it was the Emerther that wanted to meet with or did meet American President Dwight Eisenhower, perhaps over stopping atomic bomb testing. The website states, without giving information sources, quote, "Very little is known about the 5 alien races that make up the Council of Five. These 5 races have been protecting Earth and humans for a long time and last met together on this planet in 1944, close quote. I asked Sergeant CJ why he thought advanced intelligences would be communicating with Earth humans in binary code. And he replied, quote, "Well, maybe it's like the yin and yang symbol of black and white. So zeros and ones can be used all over the universe to communicate. On Earth, this is what standard ASCII 8-bit binary code looks like. It starts with the number 0, which is the equivalent of 0011, 0000, or black, black, white, white, black, 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 black. Capital letters, as it breaks down, capital letters have their own section. Lowercase letters, numbers, and here's what you would be doing with when you would have punctuation. Now, Australian geneticist Horace Drew, PhD, volunteered to translate Sergeant CJ's squares and ones. And here is the first page so that you can see how this goes. These are the letters that you get from these sequences of binary code. And so in the beginning, he gets CONTINUOUS, we know that's continuous, and then PROTE. Then he has to do more calculation. CTION of HUMNAIN, and down we go. There's another page, just so you'll get the idea of how this is done. And here, Linda, the 2 attached files provide a final accurate translation of the new Georgia binary code. Continuous protection of humanity, a latitude, longitude, 49 degrees, 27 minutes north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes east. Expose hidden knowledge to, and all is all caps, and there is this accent mark. It's there, it's in the binary, we don't know why. Citizens, advancement imperative for planetary survival. Beware of Orion 1350.3 and Z, we don't spell it this way, RUTICULI 39.1 70. He wrote the 2 coded numbers 13503 and 39.1 tell us the distance in light years from Earth to the Orion Nebula, which this is true, 1,350 light years from Earth to the Orion Nebula. Or to the binary star system of Zeta Reticuli, it should be basically 2 I's, he misspelled that, 39.17 light years, and he says, source of grays, question mark, thinking of Betty and Barney Hill and all the references to grays associated with Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. Avoid signal messages sent, and he says, avoid capture of signal by these grays or those grays at Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. Now, what's interesting about this line is that the same warning came in 2015 from Elon Musk, Tesla and space, Bill Gates, Microsoft and the Foundation, and physicist Stephen Hawking. All 3 of those minds in 2015, within about 3 or 4 months of each other, warned about both SETI, the goal of sending out signals into interstellar space, and Earth relying too much on artificial intelligence.
Beyond 3D.
Let's go back to the first line that says continuous protection of humanity, 49 degrees, 27 minutes north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes east. If that latitude and longitude are supposed to be a location on Earth where ETs from the Council of Five are supposed to be protecting humans, how odd that it turns out to be town center of Nuremberg, Germany. Nuremberg was a significant city for the Nazis in World War II and the location of the international war crime trials after the war ended. But Nuremberg was also famous more than 400 years ago in 1561, when immense black cylinders appeared in an early dawn sky and released many strange smaller blue, black, red, and orange spheres, rods, and crosses. Many people watched the aerial machines clash in battle. They reported they were fighting each other above a great black spear. What is this? That remained stationary for the hour. People reported this. This went on for an hour. And some of the UFOs crashed with smoke. And this was all, you might say, recorded in this famous woodcut by German artist Hans Glaser. So who, in that aerial UFO battle, might have been protecting humanity as stated in the Sergeant CJ binary code of continuous protection of humanity? What could the battle be about? And let's go deeper into binary code messages by comparing Sergeant CJ's string of zeros and ones to Sergeant Jim Penniston's back in December 26, 1980. That was the night that Sergeant Penniston, with Airman First Class John Burroughs and Airman Ed Kavansak, were ordered into Rendlesham Forest to investigate strange colored lights moving around in the tall forest on civilian land that ran along RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge, and that was then NATO's largest airbase. This is page 1 of the binary code written down by Sergeant Penniston after he touched the raised symbols on the surface of a mysterious black glassy triangular craft on the forest ground. These red lines mark off the groups of zeros and ones so that they can match against that Ascii code that I showed you just a couple of minutes ago, looking for letters and numbers. At the right, just like I showed you, this is what is coming down from these numbers. And we'll just keep going through here. So you see page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5 is where he stops writing, end of transmission. Now we're looking at Penniston personally approved in an official release of all the binary code. We just saw the pages that were here, up here. And some of this is different, changed over time. And then after this had been released and translated, these latitude and longitudes came from more binary code, and these eyes of your eyes, origin, it's origin here, origin here. This origin is the same as this latitude, longitude, and origin year 8100. Penniston felt very strongly, I think, about this being something that was in the category of a time machine from the future. And if you subtract Earth year 1980 from 8100, you get 6,120 years in the future for the time travelers, instead of, in his hypnosis, he uses the term 40,000 years in the future, that whatever had come back was from 40,000 years in the future. But it can also be argued that the time travelers from a distant future were not referring to Earth-based 365-day year cycles of time. But nobody really fully understands this. And it is also very important to understand that Peniston did not have any decimal placements, no designators for the decimals in those long strings of zeros and ones I showed you on those pages. So each latitude and longitude, out of all of those different peregrinations of where you put the decimal point, could be any one of 24 possibilities, according to retired astronomer Mike Reed and geneticist Horace Drew. Now, let's compare Sergeant CJ's first June 30th, 2016 binary, June 29th, 2015, the binary translation on the top, and then this is 35 years before, or this is 35 years after, whichever way you want to look at it, from December 26th. And there are three words that really do stand out as being continuous, 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 humanity, humanity, advancement, imperative for planetary survival, this continuous for planetary advance. These are 35 years apart. Now, another similar warning about planetary survival came in this binary code discovered in a wheat field next to Crabwood Copse in the village of Pitt near Winchester, Hampshire, England on August 15th, 2002. The gray alien head and binary code disk is in front of BBC Winchester's tall broadcast antenna. These thin lines, we all thought, are to simulate an early 20th century TV broadcast. Remember when there'd be the lines? The implication seemed to be that the crop formation was a reply to Earth TV signals. But was the warning from the alien depicted in the wheat holding the binary disk, or was the warning about the alien in the wheat pattern? The three stars or figures here, everybody said immediately back then, oh, this must be famous Orion belt stars. So many people think that this is talking about a threat from something associated with the Orion constellation. Now, when you go down into the binary, it's to just show you that it starts, here's where the message, it starts on the inside and winds out. And over here it is showing you, when they calculate, see the B, E, got a reflection, B-E-W-A-R-E. You see how that's working. So, okay, so that's how they started, and they get beware. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception, conduit, closing. And in fact, in the first translation, I remember talking with somebody in England about this who had gone to this formation, and they said that they thought that the binary was actually making for like a ring, like what the punctuation would look like in an old telegraph. A similar message was repeated 13 years later on June 23rd, 2015. This is last summer, near the airport of Turin, Italy, also known as Torino. This city is where Jesus Christ's alleged burial shroud is kept. Geneticist Horace Drew, PhD from Sydney, tackled these very difficult rings of binary code that included 100, if you count all these lines of these little circles that go around in between the triangles, they total 128 small circles in these straight lines between 16 triangular rays of the outermost ring. His binary translation of the outer ring only is Timeo, ET, all caps, that comes from the binary, Ferentes, exclamation point, is in the binary code. Dr. Drew said the Torino, Italy, June 23rd, 2015 it's a summer solstice wheat pattern, quote, "It looks like a clock, but we have to rotate the inner wheel to match the outer wheel," close quote. Even though the inner ring binary code is not clear, Dr. Drew thinks some of it warns about a Trojan horse event coming to Earth. He wonders in writing to me if the Trojan horse is an invasion attack by the gray ETs from Orion and Zeta Reticuli warned about by someone else in Sergeant CJ's binary code only 7 days later on June 30th, 2015. So these two events happened very close. This crop formation followed by the CJ going off on that route and that disk and the binary download on that back of that receipt.
Beyond 3D.
Sergeant CJ did receive more telepathic downloads coming into his head at night. He said the squares and lines came faster than before, so it was hard for him to write it all down. He also could see that some of the squares were darkened, and he managed to get some of the new communication written down along with his comments about what was happening. From October 27th to the first week of January 2016, Sergeant CJ was waking up a lot yelling. I talked with his wife, and she said he would wake her up talking loudly and was often saying a string of numbers while he's still asleep and not awake. She told me near tears how much all of this scared her and she wanted it to stop. Sergeant CJ said he was trying to concentrate on the dark shadings in the squares that he had not been able to copy before because the images moved too fast in his mind, going from right to left, that bluish color, but he knew there were shadings. And then he finally thought he was getting some of the shading in these new pages. Dr. Drew researched binary codes and found this one at thinkersmith.org. None of us knew this existed. That uses squares that are either clear or blackened to represent ones and zeros. Horace Drew applied it to Sergeant CJ's new pages. And on the far left of this graphic, to show you how this works, this is what's coming out of those squares and ones. IMMINENT space. Imminent. Here's the translation from October 2015 to January 2016. Imminent threat soon upon Earth's leaders and civilizations. Expose and disband hidden knowledge to all citizens. Employ safe and controlled joint study to all minds. Progression imperative for combined survival. Embrace this space vessel threat 000 journey 12 in brackets LY he interprets as light year, 12 light years. And he insists, the binary he sent me so I could see. Ikes, President Eisenhower, he thinks. IKES, this is what it comes out. IKES embedded, and then repeat, DED, citizens are ready, AIS, he interprets as, and then close, and then evolve 11111, and clearly that is not making a lot of sense. But the issue that Dr. Drew wonders, could these intelligences that are trying to use Sergeant CJ's mind be trying to reference themselves back to the 40s and the 50s and some communication with President Eisenhower? Here, Royal Emerther warning: expose foreign technology to all evolutionary advancement needed to prevent takeover. The 3 is in brackets, and there's this odd quote mark, and we have no idea what that means, but you're now seeing what has come from CJ's continued getting this binary code, and it may be, as he says to me, he says, Linda, it moves so fast. And he said, I'm not really sure how I can do it anymore. He says, I'm at the edge of my ability to try. It's like what Penniston said. He could not get the zeros and ones out of his mind's eye. It's hard for us sitting here to imagine this, that something could activate your brain in such a way that until you write it down or do something with it, I could be looking at zeros and ones while I'm talking to you, and they wouldn't go away until I wrote them down or did something. That's the same description of this Sergeant J.C. that Penniston said that he lived with until he wrote them down in a notebook. It didn't go away, and it was driving him crazy. And we have in this last paragraph this reference yet again to Emerther. And the truth is, I had never heard of this word. Dr. Drew had never heard of this word, Emerther. But when you type in the Google search bar, you get that photo I showed, and you get these informations about this group, EMER. Somebody is posting it. Then, on February 18th, 2016, Sergeant CJ found that he had added 5 new lines of squares and lines without darkening any of them. And he's doing this in a notebook. He promised me he would keep a notebook and a pen right beside the bed if he woke up. And then he emailed me, and this is what he said. This was fast, and I was unsure if I drew them down correctly. It felt like it was not meant for me to write them, and I felt weird about it, like it was not clear enough for me to. I just did the best I could and figured it was probably all messed up or wrong. They are the only ones I have ever had since I sent you photos of my notebook. I could not darken the boxes and lines because they were moving too fast, and I was having a hard time concentrating. There was much more to it, but I could not keep up concentrating, close quote. So I sent this to Dr. Drew, and what he sent back was a surprise. This shows you 5 clumps that he told me in the email that this came in. He said, I think it must be Sumerian because he recognized Ki is a Sumerian word for earth. So I sent the 5 words to Professor Joshua Jeffers, PhD, research specialist, Royal Inscriptions of the Neo-Assyrian Period Project at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, Babylonian section in Philadelphia. And here is his March 24th, 2016 reply. The first 2 words, Nabu, Rakbu, and the 4th word, Sanu, look to be Akkadian and not Sumerian. The first could be the god Nabu, but without the cuneiform, it is difficult to say since there is no divine classifier before it here. Nabu was one of the 3 most important gods in Sumeria. Nabu was the keeper of the tablets of destiny. that recorded humanity's fate. He was son of Marduk and grandson of Enki Ea of the Anunnaki. Nabu's grandfather Ea is the creator and protector of humanity because Ea created humans out of clay to be worker slaves for the Mesopotamian gods. But the supreme god Enlil was irritated by the noise humans made, apparently because we aren't telepathic and we have to talk out loud. So Enlil wanted to destroy Ea's human slave creation with a devastating flood. But Ea realized what Enlil was up to and got a friend to build an ark so that humanity could escape God Enlil's act of annihilation of humans. Professor Jeffers continues, the second word, rakbu, would be the noun rider from the verb rakabu, to ride, frequently upon a horse or chariot. The middle word could possibly be the word for the city of Larsa in southern Mesopotamia, written out phonetically, should be Larug/K without a doubled A, but the H is nonsensical for Sumerian and Akkadian and is puzzling. The fourth word, Sanu, could be an infinitive of the verb to do again, or a second time, or even to be different, strange. The fifth word, Ki, by itself can be Sumerian and would mean earth or land. The actual meaning remains unclear. Sergeant CJ is waiting to see if he has any more telepathic downloads that might explain these Sumerian and Akkadian words. But here is one more look at everything we've been able to translate from binary transmissions to Sergeant CJ to date. And you can see a progression, but all of it has to do with protection of humanity, that strange Nuremberg reference, which may be signaling that the senders of the binary are the ones that were in the craft fighting in Nuremberg nearly 400 years ago. The constant refrain, the crop circles, and here, keeping this all secret is weakening humans. That with all of us, if we had knowledge, then whatever is the threat might not be able to get a leverage point for humans who had knowledge of everything that was going on. Expose and disband hidden knowledge. This is a very puzzling, who knows, maybe he couldn't get down the squares and that Royal and Merthyr, and then add the 5 Sumerian and Akkadian words.
Beyond 3D.
Binary code coming into human minds in dreams or from touching symbols on alien machines, like what happened in Rendlesham Forest on December 26, 1980, was apparently of great interest to America's Defense Intelligence Agency. The DIA had remote viewers working at Fort Meade, Maryland, next door to the National Security Agency in 1986. Remote viewer Lynn Buchanan worked in a DIA unit called, all caps, DT-S. Their goal was to research how accurately psychic abilities could be used in their spy program called Stargate. On July 14, 1986, one of Lynn's assigned practice targets was the Rendlesham Forest incident, but only his monitor knew the target on a 3x5 card in a file drawer. Further, Lynn knew nothing about the military mystery that had occurred 6 years before on December 26 to 28, 1980. But what Lynn did see in remote viewing seems to link to the repeating theme in the binary code messages about planetary survival for aliens, humans, or both. I interviewed Lynn Buchanan recently about this 2008 CIA release document. It is Lynn's original 1986 Rendlesham Forest controlled remote viewing session. This is the top page. None of us, including Lynn, knew it had been unclassified and posted on the CIA website until John Burroughs was told to go to a specific URL on the web. It was the CIA website, and there was the 1986 transcript of Lynn Buchanan's remote viewing session. Why was it put there, Lynn wondered, without anyone telling him? The following audio segment from my interview with Lynn about the 1986 session begins as he was seeing inside of a craft in remote viewing that was landed in Rendlesham Forest, and he's trying to find a pilot and propulsion unit.
I got that the driver of this vehicle is not in the vehicle. He's somewhere else.
Like this object that you are remote viewing in Rendlesham Forest could be a drone that is not manned, but that the intelligence associated with this is somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's when I got AOL break. Oh, I'm viewing ETs. So move me back to the place with the yellow light. That's when I got an incubator. I definitely realized that this young person, whatever, was in the place of the yellow light, and that it was an incubator. Putting my analyst hat on, I would tend to say from this one session that this craft was looking for an ideal place, and once it found it, that incubator would open up and provide a living space for whatever was in it.
And you mean that the incubator in the black glassy craft, which is the outside version we have from the Penniston drawing, it would then deposit the extraterrestrial life forms in the incubator in a site on this planet to grow into whatever those extraterrestrials are.
That would be the analysis of that one session, yes.
Now, you did other remote views on RAF Bentwaters later on.
I was tasked with finding the power source. In fact, I still didn't know really what the Bentwater thing was. I got the propulsion system was a very small, enclosed thing that didn't really hook up to the craft, but was in some way providing a field of energy around the craft. And it was in an enclosed container type thing. When I was told to mentally move into the container to find out what was going on, I was not able to do that.
And this is the black box that you encountered in that very first July 14th, 1986 remote viewing. You didn't know where you were at the time, and you didn't know what it was.
That was it, yeah. And this energy type box has come up in several other things, like Sacsayhuaman that has, I think, 100-ton stones.
Sacsayhuaman is in Cusco, Peru.
Yeah, and there was a tasking about how those were moved. I've heard a lot of people say those were moved by sound and all that, but that's not what I got in my remote viewing session. I got that there was some kind of an object that emitted energy that could surround something and make it to where you could just pick it up.
Right, it would neutralize gravity.
Yeah. I had a task one time of the Utsuobune, which was an ET that landed in northern Japan. In that case, this female-looking being came out of the ship. She carried this box with her, and she never let anybody have this box. And I think the box, whatever was in the box, was what made the ship move.
Time machines, incubators of alien life trying to survive in planet seeding missions, ET hybrids and clones, eons beyond us, as the MJ-12 documents say. Whistleblowers have reported that alien technologies can make their various spacecraft, androids, and other ET technologies invisible to human eyes. This naval ship fading into invisibility is an October 2015 Northrop Grumman Facebook posting. In addition to invisibility, the extraterrestrial technology is described as functioning with self-activating software that can neutralize gravity and project three-dimensional holograms as camouflage that human eyes and minds cannot detect in the Earth environment. The alien goal, they say, is to harvest genetic material from this planet's animals and human life in order to create a large ongoing supply of rapid cycle cloned and hybridized body containers with very advanced technology that some people in the human abduction syndrome refer to as the resurrection tubes. I first learned about the cloning tube technology the first week of March 1991, when I received in the mail a large envelope that contained an audio cassette, letter, and several color drawings from a woman named Linda Porter. She was born in 1946 and began having memorable experiences with non-humans by age 12 in 1958. She had decided it was important to reach me after hearing a conference presentation that I had given in California concerning eyewitness testimony about non-human intelligences interacting with our planet. She was concerned about her vulnerability as a person caught up in the human abduction syndrome, and she was frightened about the United States government's policy of hiding the alien presence. Her letter began, quote, "We abductees are caught in the middle of a series of ongoing events that will one day prove to be historically significant to the future of the Earth. Unfortunately, because of our continuing non-voluntary interactions with these beings, we have, in a sense, become victims of both sides of the phenomena. On the one hand, we are used by the aliens for their own purposes, whatever those purposes may be. On the other, if we speak out, we risk ridicule from the public, and in some cases, possible harassment and/or intimidation by government and military personnel. If you could look directly into these creatures' eyes, you would realize that every detail of your life, no matter how personal, how mundane, how minute, is known to them. It makes me wonder, are we some kind of Ken and Barbie dolls being played with by an emotionally immature race of beings with no sense of morality? Or are we pawns held in the grasp of a dying race that will do anything for their own survival, including the cold-blooded mutilation of another species, we humans, and the brutal mutilation of helpless animals? Unless a person has been through the trauma of an abduction, they cannot comprehend how these entities can strip the mind and soul as easily as they can strip the clothes off a body. They scan details of a person's life with such facility that they make you feel as if you are an interesting piece of lint caught between their toes. In the blink of an eye, these beings devastate all personal freedom, all sense of privacy, and all prospects for living a normal existence. A person's life is never the same again. He or she is changed forever." Close quote.
Beyond 3D.
Linda Porter's words speak for a lot of abductees who have interacted with gray, blonde, reptilian, or insect humanoids. But some abductees think that there are friendly non-humans, which actually are trying to help people advance to more stability that will help the non-humans to survive as well. In this 1995 Thanksgiving letter to me, Linda Porter wrote, quote, "The people who live on the earth, those who will survive the destructive changes to come, will be evolving into a new species of being. I'm not referring right now to the time travelers from Earth's future that are here also. That was something that was necessary because Earth's governments got hold of a dangerous technology that greatly altered Earth's future for the worse. Remember the mistake that was made that I told you about a while back? Some type of technology fell into the wrong hands, and the future time travelers were sent back in time to change that. I don't know if it has been changed, at least not yet. But that was an entire sidebar to evolution that was never meant to happen," close quote. Linda Porter was the first of half a dozen people in the human abduction syndrome that I've interviewed who experienced being raised and lowered in a tube of light and passing through walls that she and other abductees say feel like thousands of little feathers all over their body. Linda said the light tube is different from the tunnels that opened up inside her bedroom, quote. The beam is used only to transfer people from Earth to a craft and back. The tunnel is a physical, created hole from one dimension to another. Traveling through the tunnel was what made me ill. It had something to do with change in physical density of two differing dimensions, close quote. Linda told me that in 1963, when she was 17 years old, she was abducted from her Covina, California home by gray-colored beings with large eyes. These gray beings seem to be in the extraterrestrial biological entities category of what the government calls EBINs, that are described in leaked government documents as friendly and concerned about Earth and human evolution. Or perhaps the Emerthers, referenced in Sergeant JC's binary downloads. Linda Porter was shown a procedure to transfer the soul or life force from a dying man into a healthy, younger clone of the man that Linda could see in one of the cloning resurrection tubes. The gray being told Linda telepathically that the same soul transfer would be done with her. The gray explained to her that she had rheumatic fever as a teenager that damaged her heart. The gray non-human said it was vital that Linda Porter's soul entity continue in the same genetic body container that she had been born with in order to accomplish an unknown alien agenda. Linda saw rise out of the top of the dead man's spine, right at the top where the neck joins to the spine, this yellow-orange light that elongated in the air as it moved across the room to a row of body-sized tubes lighted from top and bottom and filled with a strange purple-looking gas. Inside the tube on the far right was a cloned body of the same man, but several years younger. Linda Porter said there was a problem about Earth body containers, souls, other dimensions, and altered timelines. Quote, I was told that the resurrected cloned man would be relocated elsewhere, maybe Australia, and would continue on with his life there. He would die in Minnesota, where he had come from, and from this point of view, his family would think he was dead. He would be alive in Australia, which might explain the doppelganger phenomenon that John Mack and others back in the 80s. There was conferences we'd go to, and there would be people in the abduction syndrome saying, my God, I am taken up in this beam of light, and this door or tunnel opens, and it's me. I'm looking at me like I'm looking in a mirror, but it's moving to me. And they called it the Doppelganger Syndrome. Linda thought it was vital to the non-human entities that the man's soul continue functioning longer inside the same kind of container that his older sick body had been. Linda thought that part of the reason that they take tissue samples from abductees when they are quite young is to have this tissue in reserve in case a new body for abductees becomes necessary later on. Quote, new bodies can be stored indefinitely. The containers in the sketch with the 3 people in the tubes are storage containers. The containers in both new sketches I sent you are activation containers. They have a light in the top that must be on the person for an unknown amount of hours before a body can be activated if a body has been in storage. If newly made, it does not need light. In the sketch with the 3 people in the tubes, the body on the far right was the younger one given to the dying man. I got the impression the aliens do not like to do this soul transfer very often. Actually, I got the feeling the aliens are not supposed to be doing this at all. But they seem to be backed into a corner, and they have no other recourse. They also seem to be trying to hide all of this from some higher form of life, whatever the authority is that prohibits this soul transfer, also prohibits the ETs from interfering on this planet. But they are interfering. Whoever it is much higher evolved than they are and wields a great deal of power over many, many other realms of existence. There is much, much more to existence than we could ever begin to understand. Much of what we have been taught regarding the physical universe and the laws that govern it is wrong. The even doing the soul transfer from her diseased body to her new clone body in one of the lighted tubes gave Linda Porter an overview of how the cosmos is constructed from the even's point of view. The universe is built on sound patterns, which is why so many different world dimensions can exist in the same space. Each is on a different frequency. You disrupt a world dimension to the point that you destroy the carrier wave it exists on, and you have created a hole in existence that cannot support the dimension above or below it. Each frequency, besides maintaining its own world dimension, also supports or holds in place the one above it and below it. Everything is interdependent. There are countless worlds, dimensions occupying the same space without being aware of one another because of having their own individual octaves. This octave frequency holds the world dimension in place and causes it to exist safely without interfering with or even being aware of other worlds around it. This frequency acts as a buffer zone to keep everything in its place. You do anything to disrupt it, and you begin a collapse that starts a deadly chain reaction. If the density of this collapse reaches a certain weight, space-time itself begins to collapse. Atomic and hydrogen bombs physically tear into other dimensions. And whatever the experiment is that our government is involved with in outer space, if successful, it will change the density of matter to such an extent that the chain reaction started will not be able to be stopped by anybody in any world dimension. There are literally hundreds of different alien life forms here trying to stop what is happening, as it is putting their own worlds at risk. Some, as I had mentioned in earlier letters, are not supposed to be interfering, but they're doing so anyway. What they are all trying to do is stop the ripple effect that will emanate outward from Earth should this government experiment succeed. With all their technology, why don't the aliens or their superiors just walk in and stop the whole thing themselves? Why do they need us abductees to speak for them? Something just doesn't make any sense. I wonder if we are being lied to, used for some purpose to put over ideas they want us to believe. If there is an experiment, maybe if it succeeds, it will put us in competition with the aliens for something they don't want to share. Maybe they're trying to scare us out of their neighborhood, close quote.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.